The greatest untapped natural resource in our country is the creative capacity of men and women to contribute to the accomplishment of goals in our organizations. It is what is going on between the ears of the average person where the greatest potential for growth, development, productivity, performance, achievement, profitability, everything lies. And in this session, we're going to talk about one of the most important single functions of management, which is your ability to motivate others to peak performance. Your ability to use what we have discovered in the last 30, 40, 50 years to enable people to contribute their maximum to the organization. One of the things we know about is that you cannot motivate people. All you can do as a manager is create an environment where potential and motivation is released naturally. Now this takes us back, and I'm going to have to digress a little bit. It takes us back to some studies that were done in Europe around the end of World War II, actually in the late 40s and early 50s. These studies were studies where management consultants compared the output of British automobile manufacturing plants to West German automobile manufacturing plants. And what they found was that the most efficient West German automobile manufacturing plants were outproducing the British plants by as much as 4 to 1. Now, of course, the researchers in this, the British researchers said, well, of course, there's an obvious answer for this. The German plants are all brand new because they were bombed back to the Stone Ages during World War II, and our plants are older, they're more obsolescent. So the researchers again went back and looked at this, and they compared British plants that were also brand new to West German plants that were brand new, that were manufacturing the same size of car, with the same unionized workforce, with the same materials, the same steel, the same technology, everything else. And they found between the most or the best managed plant and the worst managed plant, they still found a productive difference of 4 to 1. They found a productivity difference that could not be explained by material technical factors. This became known as what we call the X factor. The X factor was, if you like, the mystery factor. What was this factor? The discovery of this X factor is what has led to the revolution in management that's taken place in the last 30 or 40 years in the free world. The discovery of the X factor is what explains why countries in not free, or why industry in countries that are not free have never been able to tap the natural resources, the energy, enthusiasm, commitment, ability of their people. It is called the psychological factor. The psychological factor and the discovery of this psychological factor has led to the great breakthroughs in modern management. Up until World War II, up until the Depression, World War II, almost all advances in management had taken place as the result of advances in technology, advances in science, advances in production processes, in bigger, more efficient, faster machines and factories. After World War II, the great advances have been managerial in nature. They have been psychological in nature. As a matter of fact, the psychological revolution has overpowered the technological revolution, and today still the technological revolution comes in behind or chases after the psychological revolution. We call this the X factor, and it explains more than anything else why some companies succeed and others fail, why the top 20% of companies in every industry earn 80% of the profits, why the top people, the top talented people are in the best companies, why they're drawn to the best companies, and why people in top companies perform. And if you can understand the principles that we talk about in this session, you can make a dramatic difference in your effectiveness as a manager. The psychological factor really comes down to a very simple point, one that I believe is the most important breakthrough in the development of human potential in the 20th century. It is the discovery of what is called the self-concept. Now, the self-concept is the belief structure or value system of the individual. It is a composite of all the different beliefs, values, attitudes, and opinions of the individual. And the self-concept is what governs individual performance, behavior, and output. It is that all changes in or improvements in external performance and behavior begin with improvements in the self-concept. In companies that are successful, in companies that have highly motivated workforces, you find people with positive self-concepts. In companies that have average productivity, high failure rates, lots of mistakes, you find people with low self-concepts. The self-concept is like the command system that sits in the core of the personality. And we're going to talk about this because the self-concept, if you like, is the key to effective management. Self-concept is made up of three factors. Factor number one is what is called the self-ideal. The self-ideal, or the ideal image, is the ideal or image or picture that individuals have of the very best person they can possibly be. That is why we say that companies that are really successful have a culture and have people in the company that people look up to and admire. The self-ideal is made up of all the men and women whose qualities, characteristics, and attributes that the individual admires and wants to be like. And therefore, in successful companies, they are continually making heroes of men and women who make significant contributions to the organization, and everybody in the organization strives to be more like the major contributors. Number two is the self-image. Now, the self-image is what controls performance on a day-to-day basis. It's the way that you see yourself now. And we know that the way that we see ourselves on a day-to-day basis is largely determined by the way people treat us. If a person treats us well and treats us as though we are important and attractive and intelligent, we tend to see ourselves as important and attractive and intelligent. We tend to act as though we were important and attractive and intelligent. If a person treats us as though we're a jerk, destructively criticizes us, runs us down, or ignores us, then we tend to think that we're not particularly competent, and we act as though we are not particularly competent. And the third part of the self-concept is the self-esteem. The self-esteem is the core of self-concept. The self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. It's the emotional component. And the best definition of self-esteem is how much you like yourself. How much you like yourself. Now, what does this mean for us? It means that the difference between corporations, if you want to look for one significant difference, good times and bad, good products and bad, the most important part is how much people like themselves in the organization. If you look at the work that was done by Tom Peters, you look at the work that's been done in creating excellence and implementing excellence and search of excellence, passion for excellence, you find one common theme that comes out over and over again is that companies that create environments where people feel terrific about themselves are high-performance organizations. They're more profitable, they're more successful, they make fewer mistakes, they are industry leaders irrespective of what is going on outside. So the objective of management has to be to create a high self-esteem environment, to create an environment and to do the things on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis that make people feel great about themselves, that make people feel terrific. And this brings us, before we go on, to two or three other key points. And they are these. The major barriers to performance. The major barriers. Remember we said before that you cannot motivate people, but you can remove the obstacles that stop them from motivating themselves. In other words, you can release potential, you can get out of the way of people, but you can't motivate them. What are the two major demotivators in human life? Well, they are both factors that go back to early childhood. They're called negative habit patterns or conditioned responses, and they are, number one, fear of failure. The fear of failure, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of being set back is the number one reason why people fail in life. Fear of failure holds us back from trying. It stops us from taking risks. It stops us from taking on new assignments. It stops us from volunteering. It stops us from taking any chances at all. One of the things we know about high-performance organizations is that people are willing to take chances, take risks, willing to move ahead. Number two is that fear of rejection. Now, the fear of rejection is the fear of criticism, the fear of condemnation, the fear of censure, the fear of making a mistake and being dumped on. These are the two major obstacles that stand between each person and high performance. What are successful organizations? Successful organizations are those who remove these barriers. They make it all right to fail. They make it clear that nobody gets rejected, dumped on, criticized, censured, or complained at. They create an environment where people feel free to be the best they can be. That's the key. People feel free to try. A good friend of mine once said many years ago that the first part of the word triumph is always try. And people feel free to try because they're not afraid of making mistakes. The wonderful thing is that the more a person likes themselves, the more they value themselves, the more they consider themselves to be a worthwhile human being, the less they fear failure, the less they fear rejection, the more willing they are to try. The less a person likes themselves, the more negative the self-image, the lower the level of self-esteem, the more likely it is that they will be hesitant or uneasy about taking any chances. So management's job is, as Tom Peters says very well, is to encourage lots of good tries, to encourage reasonable experimentation, reasonable efforts, even reasonable failures in an attempt to do things, improve things, make things better, serve customers better, cut costs, and so on. Finally, two key points is the two basic needs that human beings have in the world of work. The first need that everybody has is what is called an autonomy need. The autonomy need is the need to be an individual. It's the need to stand out. It's the need to be recognized for individual achievement. It's the need to be a single person. It is the ego or the I am special need. And the second need that people need in the world of work is the dependency need. The dependency need is the need to be a part of something bigger than themselves. People want to be part of a team. It's what Abraham Maslow called the affiliation need or affiliative need. It's the need to feel that we are part of a group, that we are recognized and accepted by other people that we work with. And good organizations create environments where people both feel autonomous and important and individualistic, and they feel and they satisfy their dependency needs and that they feel they are part of a team. The reward structures in excellent organizations, which we'll talk about, always reward not only autonomous or individual performance, but they reward team performance. So what we're going to talk about in this session is 21 key ideas that you can use to create high self-esteem. 21 ideas you can use to reduce the fears of failure, to increase the propensity to try, to cause people to feel terrific about themselves when they're in your workplace. And wonderfully enough, each of these ideas has been developed over years and years. Each one of them works very effectively. Sometimes just implementing one of these ideas can transform a normal, average work environment into a superior work environment almost overnight. Number one starting point in building peak performance is to recognize this key factor. Here's the key factor. The key factor is that the nexus between the manager and the managed is the key determinant of performance, effectiveness, productivity, output, and profitability within an organization. Let me explain. Here is you, the manager, and here is what we might call the managed, or the subordinate. Here is the place where the two of you meet. It is at this point, whether it is positive or negative, that the past, present, and future of the organization is contained. If this point of meeting between the boss and the subordinate is positive, supportive, encouraging, and building of positive self-esteem and positive self-image, then performance, productivity, and output will be positive, moving into the excellent range. The more positive this is, the greater will be the performance and output. If it is negative for any reason at all, performance and output will be less, lower, lower, right down to the point where if people fear failure and fear rejection, they will only do exactly what they have to do to avoid being fired, and sometimes they won't even do that. And everybody has worked in an environment which has been, if you like, a low self-esteem environment. The 21 keys are keys aimed at improving the quality of this nexus or this meeting point between the manager and the managed. Everything that you do to improve this quality improves the overall quality of your work life, and no matter where you are on the ladder of management, from lower level management all the way to the top, or even if you want to be a manager, I'll tell you this, is the better you can get peak performance out of people, the more and better people you will be given to get peak performance out of. That the top managers and leaders of our day today are not necessarily men and women who are brilliant, but they are people who are capable of eliciting extraordinary performance from ordinary people. All right, what's the first thing that you can do of our 21 points? Number one, obviously, is hire the right people. This is so simple. Hire the right people. You have to have the right people to start with. Proper selection, as they say, is the first law of management. In my estimation, it's 95% of your success. If you hire the wrong people, then no matter what you do, no matter what techniques you use, no matter how much effort you put in, you're not going to make any difference. I remember once at one of my seminars, a farmer came up to me and he said, Brian, he said, I understand exactly what you mean. He said, out on the farm, he said, we say you never try to teach a pig to fly. Now, I'm always nice to people who come up to me and talk to me at my seminars. I couldn't figure out what he meant. And I said, well, that's very interesting. He said, yeah, he said, you don't try to teach a pig to fly for two reasons, he said. First of all, it doesn't do any good because the pig ain't never going to fly. He said, and second of all, it just irritates the pig. And what this means is simply this, is that some people will not respond to the very best treatment that you can give them. So hiring the right people is the starting point. And the way that you hire the right people is very simple. By the way, we have a whole program on hiring and firing, which has a tremendous number of ideas. But let me give you just a very simple idea that you can use with regard to hiring. Hire as much for attitude and personality as for skill. Because attitude and personality, as most of the big companies are beginning to realize, is more important. If they've got the right attitude and the right personality, you can train people to do the job well. Now, the second part is take your time. Take your time when you hire. The biggest mistakes that are ever made are rapid hiring mistakes. And here's a very simple discipline to help you hire right. It's called 3 times, 3 times, 3 times. Is hire or interview at least 3 candidates for the job before you make a decision. Interview the candidate that you like at least 3 times before you make a decision. Interview the candidate in at least 3 different environments, in your office, over coffee, and at lunch. If you'll do that, even though it takes a little bit longer, you will increase your ability to hire people well tremendously. And second of all, here's a little formula. It's called the SWAN formula. The SWAN formula is used by a number of very successful companies to hire. SWAN simply stands for SMART. Hire smart people. Some very, very interesting research indicates that a person's general intelligence is the greatest single indicator of their productivity, performance, and longevity with the company. So hire people that are reasonably intelligent. That doesn't mean you have to hire geniuses for average positions, but look for people who are intelligent, and you can tell intelligent people because they usually ask a lot of questions. Number 2 is look for people who work hard. Look for people who are willing to work hard and who have backgrounds that indicate that they've worked long hours at something. The fourth, or the third, SWA, is look for people who are ambitious. People who want to use the job that they're starting with as a springboard to something more. They want to advance. Ambitious people are people who are willing to take training, who are taking training, who read, who study, who grow, and so on. And finally, look for people who are nice. In the final analysis, this is the key, is to hire nice people. Laura Helmsley has that beautiful ad for the Helmsley Hotels. It says, we don't hire people and train them to be nice. We just hire nice people. And especially if people have to deal with the public, hire nice people. And the final point with regard to hiring, and this is really important, is that get rid of difficult people. Get rid of problem people. Get rid of people who you cannot save. Get rid of people who are incompetent. Get rid of people who are not smart, who don't work hard, who are not ambitious, and who are not nice. Very important reason is a rotten apple does poison the whole barrel. That if you keep incompetent or difficult people on staff, you demoralize and demotivate others, you lower their self-esteem, you lower their feelings of self-confidence, you lower their commitment to you and the company. But when you get rid of a difficult person, everybody else in the company cheers. One of the hallmarks of professional management is the willingness and the ability to de-hire or to cut out or to ruthlessly weed out incompetence and difficult personalities. Okay, second key of the 21 is start them off right. Start them off right. There is very extensive research that says that when you start a new employee, you should start them off with hands-on training. They have what is called low task relevant maturity. Low task-relevant maturity means, in effect, that they don't know how to do the job yet. A person who doesn't know how to do the job is very insecure. They're insecure in that if you just let them sink or swim, what happens is their self-esteem drops through the floor because they can't do the job well. They make mistakes. They get a feeling of failure. They get a feeling that they're not very good. They feel like losers. Your job is to make people feel like winners. Winners build self-esteem. So, low task-relevant maturity. Whenever you start a person at a new job of any kind, make sure that you or somebody else good works with them long enough for them to get a sense and an understanding for how to do the job well. Also, start them off strong. Start strong, which is simply this, is put them in over their head, bury them in work, load the work on top of them. You see, people like a lot of work. The number one desire, the number one most desired factor in the world of work today is that work be challenging. Number two is that work be interesting. And there's nothing makes a person happier about their work when they start a job all full of eagerness and interest and openness to new ideas than to put them in over their head. Load them with work. Don't start people off gradually, because if you start people off with a tremendous strong kick, if you start them off with tremendous help with a very good strong person, what will happen is these people will become your very best performers. And research shows that even 10 years after you've started a person off right and started them off strong with hands-on help, 10 years later they're still doing better than people that started off without a high level of work and without the hands-on treatment. But hands-on is really important. No sink or swim. It doesn't work anymore. Always hands-on. Number three is communicate clear expectations. Whenever you communicate clear expectations, you make it possible for people to win. Whenever you communicate vague expectations, all you do is you cause them to feel like losers. As a matter of fact, the number one complaint in the world of work today is not knowing what's expected. Not being sure of what a person is supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it and who they're supposed to do it for and to what level of quality and so on. The boss says, well, I want you to do this, but it's not enough. So communicate clear expectations so people know exactly what it is. We say, for instance, that you cannot hit a target you can't see. You cannot be a winner unless you know where the goal is. That the clearer the goals are, the more easy it is for people to achieve them. The more they achieve them, the more they feel like winners. The more they feel like winners, the more their self-esteem goes up. Fuzzy goals leads to indeterminate results, leads to people feeling like losers, causes self-esteem to go down. Okay, people want to feel like winners. They need clear goals. So tell them exactly what it is you want them to accomplish. Clear goals makes them feel like winners. Fuzzy goals makes them feel like, woo, makes them feel like losers. Next is be specific when you delegate. Be specific. Be clear. Make the task measurable if you possibly can. Set measurable performance standards. People need to know what constitutes excellent performance. A very good exercise, by the way, is to ask yourself in advance, if this job were done excellently, what would it look like? How would I describe an excellent job? And then tell the person that if this job were done excellently, it would be done in this period of time, it would look like this, it would accomplish that, and so on, so people know what to aim at. Set deadlines. People need deadlines in order to organize their time. Give them deadlines, and then finally, monitor, check, and control. Monitor, check, and control. Once you've given a person a job, you're clear and specific, make it measurable, set performance standards, set deadlines, and then keep on top of the job. This is what makes people feel terrific. You think, when you look at a football team or a basketball team, what do they have? They have very clear, specific goals. They all have clear roles. They know how the score is measured, and they have a time clock running all the time, and they have regular sounds, regular noise, regular feedback on performance. Really important. We'll talk about that in a second. Number 4, key to building high esteem in an organization is participative management, or what we call participation. Now, participation, in order to work, cannot be a tool. It has to be a genuine commitment on the part of management. In other words, you have to believe that people need to be involved and people are entitled to participate in determining the work they do, the standards they set, how they accomplish it, and so on. We have found over and over again, by the way, that the most effective work teams are democratic work teams, where the boss and the workers work together in participation to discuss what needs to be done, to divide up the work, to assign it to different people, to monitor it, to set timelines, and so on. So how do we do it? Well, first of all is regular meetings. The more often that you meet with your staff, the higher will be their self-esteem. One of the best analogies to use, or metaphors, is that of the family. Imagine applying the family metaphor of regular communications, getting together around the dinner table, regular give and take, playing, talking, and so on, to the workplace. If you don't spend regular time, regular dinners, regular meetings, regular communication with your family, family life begins to deteriorate, and it's the same thing in the company. So regular meetings. The next is the manager as coach. Manager as coach. The job of the manager is not to be a dictator, but to tell people how they're doing, what they're doing, to give encouragement, to give guidance, and so on. At these participative management meetings, you hand out assignments, you discuss work in progress, you reassign work, you get feedback from each person. Each person hears what the others are doing and participates in it, and staff discusses everything. Now, interestingly enough, I think it was Socrates who said that we only learn something by dialoguing about it. In motivation, we only become committed to something to the degree to which we are allowed to discuss it. We only become involved and loyal and excited about any task to the degree to which we can contribute our opinions and our ideas. So the more discussion you have over the work, the objectives, the goals, and how to accomplish it, the more discussion you have, the more commitment, the more loyalty, the more excitement, the more enthusiasm, and so on. Now, number D is the commitment to quality work. Since quality work is what is going to determine your career, how much of it you produce, commitment to quality work requires emotion. Is that quality work can never be produced without some kind of emotional commitment. And emotion and quality work are only achieved through involvement. That people only get excited enough and determined enough and committed enough to work and take things to the final step where they do excellent work when they get a chance to participate in setting goals, setting standards, taking feedback, discussing with other people, and so on. So discussion equals motivation, and that's the final thing. Discussion has a one-to-one relationship to motivation. If you want your people to be motivated, if you want them to have high self-esteem, if you want them to be positive, if you want them to be committed, then they need an opportunity to talk about what they're doing. And more than that is good people will not tolerate a work environment where they are not involved in their work. Number 5 is the 3 R's of motivation. Actually, we're going to talk about the 3 R's and the 4 factors. The 4 factors, first, the 4 factors of motivation, or the 4 factors of self-esteem, are number 1, leadership style. Leadership style is a key factor in determining how motivated people are within the team. Sometimes just changing the leader changes the whole performance of the organization. Number 2 is the reward structure within the organization. In other words, what are the incentives for excellent performance? Number 3 is the organizational climate. In other words, is it a happy place to work, or is it a negative place to work? Is it a performance-oriented place or a politically oriented place? And number 4 is the nature of the work itself. Some work is inherently motivational. Other work is inherently depressing. So those are the 4 keys. By the way, good organizations are always trying to structure the work so that the nature of the work fits the nature of the person, and that the two of them combine to lead to high self-esteem and peak performance. Leadership style is the one thing which can be changed instantaneously. The others, the reward structure, the organizational climate, the nature of the work, can be changed slowly and have to be thought through, but leadership style is the thing that can be changed the fastest. In other words, you can go from being negative to being positive, and as a positive leader, you suddenly become a multiplying factor in work. That's why so many organizations bring in a Lee Iacocca or a Michael Eisner for Disneyland or for Disney Corporation, Or for other organizations, they bring in a highly motivational leader, and he or she becomes a motivational factor throughout the entire organization, leaving everything else unchanged. Now, the 3 R's for motivation are rewards, and rewards must be based on performance. The only way for a reward structure to work in helping the company be successful is that it must be directly related to performance. You must not reward anything else, not seniority, not longevity, not education, not anything, but just performance. My friend Mike LeBouf has what he calls the greatest management principle in the world, and it says that what gets rewarded gets done. So if you want to see what is getting done in an organization, look at what's getting rewarded. What gets rewarded gets done. The second is recognition. Recognition is something that managers owe to their people, and one of the greatest complaints in the world of work is not being recognized for good work. So recognition for wins. Whenever a person does something that is good, something that's exceptional, or even makes a good try, give them recognition. Give them public recognition. And number 3 is reinforcement. Reinforcement, remember, what we know from behavioral psychology is that what gets reinforced gets done again. So every single time that you give praise, privately and publicly, for any behavior, you know you're going to get more of it. The corollary is this, is that if you don't praise and reinforce good work behavior and quality work, you're going to get less of it. Many companies think that they don't have to give any praise and reinforcement. Many companies think, well, we give a paycheck, that's our reinforcement. However, if whatever you want more of, you reward, recognize, and reinforce. And you can always tell in an organization what they reward, what they recognize, and what they reinforce, because that's what they're getting most of. Successful organizations create environments where the only way you can get ahead is by doing the things, performing in the areas, achieving the recognition in the areas that contribute to the company's goals. That's why we talked about goals being so important. Well, management by values is the next concept. Management by values. I think this is really important. What it simply says is that the deepest of all human needs, right at the core of the self-concept, is the need for meaning and purpose. Meaning and purpose. And meaning and purpose always arise out of the value structure of the individual. So that's why it is so important for you as the manager to convey over and over again what the values of the organization are, what you believe in. And the higher the values of the organization, quality, friendliness, service, respect for the individual, building self-esteem, training and growing people, whatever your values are, those are the values that stimulate, trigger, motivate, and inspire people. But don't assume that people know what the values are. It's important that you, as the manager, continually reinforce the values, and you continually reinforce the values in action. That means when somebody's having a problem, that's where you demonstrate what the values are. When you have to deal with a difficult customer, that's where you demonstrate what your values are. When you deal with somebody who's being unfair or demanding, that's how you demonstrate what the company really stands for. All right, the next point, by the way, under this, is gives people a sense of the big picture. People need to know why they're doing what they're doing. We say over and over again, you know, it's interesting. My little girl, Christina, 7 years old, and I had told her to do something not long ago, and just because I felt like it. And she said, "Daddy, what's the reason?" And I thought about that for a while. I had told her to stop doing something or to do something. And you know, I couldn't think of what the reason was. I had fallen sort of automatically into, just because she was making noise or she was doing something that was inconvenient, I just said, "Don't do that," or "Do this," or... And she said, "What's the reason?" And I thought about it, and I looked at her for a while, and I said, "Christina, honey, I can't think of a good reason for you not to do that. You go ahead and do it, just as you were planning to." She looked at me, and she smiled, and she ran off to play. Well, now, whenever we have a discussion, and I say, "Christina, would you please do this, or please not do that?" Or she says, "I want this," and I say, "No, you can't have it." She stops and she says, "Daddy, what's the reason?" And it forces me to stop and think. And the reason I tell this story is that whenever you give a person something to do in your company, You should think in terms of them asking, what's the reason? Because the more reasons you give for anybody to do anything, the more excited they're going to be about doing it. So always give a reason. Always explain the values. And this brings us to number 7, which is management by objectives. Management by objectives is based on a very simple management principle that says that you clearly specify what it is that people are to do, but you do not specify exactly how they're to do it. Management by objectives is used with competent people. You see, the more competent a person is, the more they require autonomy, the more they have these needs to stand out. They want to work by themselves. So use management by objectives with competent people. How do you do it? Step 1 is you tell them clearly the objective. Step 2 is you discuss with them how you might accomplish the objective. Step 3 is you turn over 100% responsibility to the person. And you give them a measurement, and you give them a time boundary. And step 4 is agree on when to check. And then what you do from then on is you just check at regular intervals and get feedback and find out how it's going. But you leave the entire task to the person. This is one of the best ways to build self-reliance. It's one of the best ways to build self-esteem, because when people are free to work by themselves on a critical job and to accomplish it in their own way, not only will they be more creative, not only will they be more motivated, but their self-esteem goes up because they feel like winners when they achieve it. And this brings us to number 8, which is management by exception. Management by exception is a terrific managerial tool that builds self-esteem in others and takes a tremendous workload off of you. Management by exception is based on the simple fact that what you do is when you assign a job, assign it clearly, assign it in its entirety, arrange for a schedule of checking, and then leave it alone, except when there is a variance. What you do is you instruct the staff member to report only deviations from plan. For instance, if you set a structured set of sales, the person's supposed to sell 1,000 units a week, then what you do is you have them come back to you if the sales drop below 1,000. Other than that, they don't have to report to you at all. As long as everything is going smoothly, no reporting is necessary. Report only upon exception. So if you do not hear from the person, you are safe to assume that everything is going according to plan. Management by exception is a wonderful tool because it saves you a lot of time and it builds self-esteem in others because they feel self-reliant, they feel autonomous, they feel like achievers, they feel like winners. Number 9, way to build self-esteem is called the Pareto principle. Now the Pareto principle, we talk about it in virtually every single session because it's so important, is the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule says that 80% of the value of what you do comes from 20% of what you do. That your job as a manager is to make sure that people are doing the 20% that accounts for 80%. Your job as a manager is to teach people continually to always be analyzing their work and setting priorities on it and looking at, what am I doing? Am I working on my high-value areas or my low-value areas? Repeat it and reaffirm. This is called the vital few, the few tasks that make a big difference versus the trivial many. All the other tasks that distract attention, and even if they're all done well, it doesn't make any contribution. The Pareto principle is vital because we only get high self-esteem when we feel we are making progress toward the accomplishment of worthwhile goals. In other words, if we are working on something that is not important, we don't get any self-esteem for finishing it on time or finishing it well. So be very alert to that. The more you can keep your staff focused on important tasks, the more intrinsically motivating the task will be, because the accomplishment of the task will boost their self-esteem and make them feel like winners. Number 10 is manager as teacher. Manager as teacher. One of the most important roles that a manager has is to teach the people under him or her how to do the job, how to do it better, how to do the job. Must never make the mistake of thinking that people know. If they knew, they'd have your job. Take time to teach. Wonderfully enough, It's just the same as when your father or your mother taught you how to fish or taught you how to cook. When you spend time, taking time to teach causes people to feel valuable, causes their self-esteem to go up. It causes them to feel important. Very, very important. So take time to teach. Take time to instruct. Take time to answer questions. Take time to give feedback. Take all the time in the world, because one of your most important responsibilities is to teach the next generation of people. As we say, your job is to grow people. Your job is to grow people. It's growing people where you can make your greatest contribution. An important point is to remember that of all assets in a corporation, only people can be made to increase in value. All other assets and resources deteriorate, but to the degree to which you grow people, you can actually cause them to increase in value and increase in the value of their contribution. Brings us to number 11. Number 11 is self-concept builders. Now, we've talked about some of these, and I'll just go over them quickly. The key self-concept builders is challenge. Challenge, and the more challenge people have, the more positive they feel about themselves. The second is freedom. The more freedom they have to work and get the job done on their own, the better they feel because it satisfies their autonomy needs. Third is control. The more regular feedback that they get on their performance, the better they feel about themselves and their work. The fifth is respect. Respect from their boss builds positive self-esteem. The fifth is warmth. Warmth means the more that they feel that their boss likes them as a person, the better they perform. The next is success. The more opportunities they have to actually succeed by being given jobs that are within their capabilities, the more they feel like winners, the higher their self-esteem. And finally, the last is confident expectations. There is nothing that boosts self-esteem and increases performance more than the individual feeling that their boss believes that they have the capacity to do the job. So always be telling people the equivalent of, I believe in you. I know you can do it. I know you're going to do a great job at this. Even when a person is not too sure, fear of failure, fear of rejection, constantly encourage them and tell them that you believe in their capacities. Number 12 is zero defects. Zero defects is a neat concept. It's a concept where you get everybody to concentrate on quality. Everybody to continually think in terms of doing an excellent job. Zero defects is that you set a standard of 100% quality. And then you do everything possible to get everybody to think of how they can do the job in such a way that there's no mistakes. Really, no mistakes. And you make a big thing out of quality work, and you set an example, and you're continually saying to people and showing people that by your own example, you're striving for quality too. You see, a wonderful thing about quality is this, is that every single time we do a good job, our self-esteem goes up. Every time we do an average job, nothing happens. When you do an average job, nothing happens to your self-esteem. It's just an activity. When you do a poor job, your self-esteem goes down because you feel like a loser. When you do an excellent job and you are recognized, rewarded, reinforced, and appreciated for doing an excellent job, your self-esteem goes up because you feel like a winner. But you cannot do an excellent job unless somebody sets a standard of quality, and zero defects is a wonderful standard. Say, let's aim at doing a perfect job. A very simple example is typing a letter with no mistakes. Another example is putting out a proposal with no typos, with all of the numbers checked. Another example is producing a product or service or a sales order form that is absolutely perfectly filled in. And when somebody does something like that, make a big thing out of it, because whatever you reinforce, you're going to get more of. Now, another way to build high self-esteem is quality teams, often called quality circles. Quality teams and quality circles are teams that are put together at the promotion of management, but they consist of staff. And their job is to get together once a week on company time to talk about ways that they can improve the quality of the way the business is done. And then they recommend improvements to the staff. They recommend and they send the improvements up. Why is quality teams and quality circles so important? It's because it makes people feel, it satisfies their dependency needs. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel valuable. It makes them feel like their opinion is being solicited and is cared about by the company. So take the opportunity wherever you can to form quality teams. And let the teams meet on regular working hours, let them meet once a week, let them meet sometimes interdepartmentally, and to brainstorm and come up with ideas on how to improve order handling, how to improve product quality, how to improve processing, how to improve inventory handling, and so on. Number 14 is brainstorming. Now, brainstorming is something that we talk about all the time because brainstorming is one of the most powerful tools of management. Every time you use brainstorming or bring your group together to brainstorm on solving a specific problem, and that's what you need, is a specific problem or goal. And you bring a team of people together to sit around a table for 15 to 45 minutes and generate as many ideas as possible to solve the problem or goal. What you do is you rev up people's creative juices. You build their self-esteem by asking for their ideas. You create a better climate of cooperation and teamwork. You create better friendships when people engage in brainstorming activities, and you come up with lots of good ideas. You will be astonished at the number of good ideas that the average person has to help you do your job better. As a matter of fact, we describe brainstorming in far greater depth in our program on creative thinking and on the Innovative Manager, but is one of the primary jobs of managers to hold brainstorming meetings on a regular basis, and if you're not doing it, you are wasting one of the most precious resources your company has, the untapped, unharnessed brain power of the average person. Number 15 is what is called the winning edge theory. Now, the winning edge theory simply says that in every business and in every organization, every activity, there are certain key jobs that are critical, and that if you can develop a winning edge in those critical jobs, you can make an extraordinary difference in performance. The winning edge starts by identifying the key result areas of your work and asking yourself, where can you gain superiority? The winning edge theory is based on the fact that all success in business comes from doing one or two things in a superior fashion and doing them over and over again and becoming outstanding in those areas. Developing that winning edge on an individual basis and on a company basis, helping an individual develop a winning edge in one specific area of function, helping the unit, the department, or the company develop a winning edge can be the key and is always the key to high performance, high profitability, high self-esteem, because when you develop a winning edge and people know it, they feel like winners. And your job is to get them to feel like winners. Continuous training and education. Continuous training and education is one of the biggest motivators, and that is why companies like IBM spend as much as $1 billion a year training their people, because they know that training has about a 30-to-1 payoff to the bottom line. Can you imagine that for every dollar that you spend in training, you get about $30 back in increased results? You know, the average payroll, the average company's operating expenses are 85% payroll in our country, and less than 1% is spent on training those people that absorb 85% of the payroll. It's absolutely phenomenal. But I'll tell you this, there's a direct relationship between continuous training and development and the feeling of growth, the feeling of personal growth that people enjoy or people experience, and high self-esteem. Whenever you take in new information and learn and grow and feel yourself becoming more of what you're capable of becoming, more of your potential being released, your self-esteem goes up. So continuous training is absolutely essential to creating a winning corporate climate. Number 18 is mentoring. Mentoring means taking the time to pick one or two people and become, if you like, a friend and a coach. Now, they can be people under you, they can be people near you, they can be people in other departments, but one of the key functions of senior management is to take the time to bring along young, talented, ambitious people, to help them and to guide their careers. The wonderful thing about this is that attention from senior people, attention from people that we respect, builds self-esteem. We find that whenever somebody pays attention to us, whenever somebody goes out of their way to help us become better, somebody that we respect, and especially the process of mentoring, our self-esteem goes up, our value goes up. And in many of the studies that have been done recently, what we have found is that senior executives over and over again say that it was the effect or the impact of another executive, somebody who took an interest in them, somebody who helped them, somebody who brought them along, that made all the difference in their life. One of the greatest tributes to your success as a manager is the number of people who say that you are the person who made them what they are today. In fact, many senior managers find that they get their greatest amount of satisfaction in life from looking at the people that they have mentored. Be a good listener. Be a good listener. Several reasons for being a good listener. Number one is that listening builds self-esteem. There's nothing that builds self-esteem faster than for you to take the time to listen to the people who report to you. They feel terrific about themselves when you do it. Number two is that listening builds trust, which is the foundation of peak performance, is trust in the organization. But more important than that, listening builds character. Listening builds character in that the more you listen to other people, the more you genuinely try to understand and feel for them, the more it develops yourself, because it requires such discipline to listen without interruptions and to listen attentively. Listening builds character, and listening also enables you to get a real feeling for what the person thinks. We always know that when a person spends time listening to us, it means that they value us, they care about us, they consider us to be important. Number 19 is consideration. We find that in our studies of excellent managers, there are two characteristics of the excellent manager. Number one is that they're high in consideration, and number two is that they're high on structure, which is to say that they treat the person like a friend, but they're absolutely crystal clear with regard to task. Is that people know exactly what's expected of them, but they think that their boss, and they feel that their boss regards them as a friend rather than just as a cog in the wheel. So consideration is important. Number 20 is caring. There is nothing that raises people's self-esteem that causes them to feel more valuable than to know that their boss cares about them as a person. Asking them questions about their family and their personal life, listening attentively, being sympathetic, treating them as though they're valuable and important. And that brings us to number 21, what we call the friendship factor. The friendship factor is the key to success in business today. In fact, it's safe to say that your success in business is going to be determined by the number of business friendships that you can make and by the quality of those business friendships. That the friendship factor is what determines who will help you when you're in a pinch. The friendship factor determines whether or not people will go the extra mile, whether they'll perform at that level of quality, whether they will achieve excellence, and whether they feel terrific about themselves when they're working with you. The key to everything that we've talked about in the last hour has been what we call golden rule management. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know that you feel the very best about yourself when certain things are going on around you in your work environment. You know that you feel the very best about yourself when you're getting along with your boss in a particular way. If you use that as your guide and ask yourself, what causes my self-esteem to go up at work? What makes me happy and excited and enthusiastic and fulfilled? What to me is the ideal relationship to have with my boss and with my coworkers, and then do everything possible to create that for other people, then you will always stay on the track. If you always stay on the track, if you learn how to motivate others to peak performance, this, as much as any other single ability, can lead you into the higher levels of management and the higher levels of success in your career.